Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel, and in today's video I'm going to be teaching you how to find one-sided limits. In the previous videos we were finding limits of the function in general, but in this video we're going to be finding the left limit and the right limit. So when x approaches a certain value from the left and the right. So let's get started. Okay guys, so here is our first function, and our function is going to be x squared if x is greater than or equal to 1, and it's going to be 3 minus x if x is greater than 1. So basically what this means is, one second, I'm gonna unscrew my, I was just opening my pen. Okay, so what this means is x is approaching 1 from which side? X is less than or equal to 1. This means x is approaching, this means x is going to approach 1 from the negative side. Less than or equal to 1. So less than or equal to 1 obviously means it's going to be approaching from the negative side. Less than 1, okay? And then for 3 minus x, if x is greater than 1, this means x is approaching 1 from the positive side, because x has to be greater than 1, and when x is greater than 1, they're all positive. There's no negative values. So here we have two sides of our limit, the negative side and the positive side. Now we're going to find the one-sided limits for each. I'm going to write it out. Okay guys, so here I wrote out the left limit, the right limit, and the total limit, okay? And we'll only be able to identify our total limit after doing the left and the right side. So let's start with the left side. So the left side equation is x squared, and to find the limit, we're going to substitute 1 into x, okay? So 1 squared is just 1, meaning the limit for our left, the left limit of this function is going to be 1. Okay, our left limit is 1. Let's move on to our right limit. 3 minus x. Okay, now you're going to just plug in 1. 3 minus 1 is just 2. So our left limit and our right limit are different from each other. So that means our limit for the whole function does not exist. Okay? Since they are different from each other, the limit does not exist. Okay? Let's move on to another example. And I forgot to mention that because the left limit and the right limit are not equal to each other, the function is going to be discontinuous. Okay? The limit does not exist and it's going to be discontinuous. Okay guys, so here is our second example, and in this one we have three equations, and that won't matter much because I'll show you how to do it, okay? So in this one we have two values. We have -1 and 1, and we need to find the left and right limit for each. It's asking, determine if limit when x approaches -1 and when limit x approaches 1 exists or not. Okay, so first let's write it in the same way I did before. So the equation is -x minus 2 if x is less than or equal to -1. So this means when x is approaching -1 from which side? It's less than or equal to -1, meaning x approaching -1 from the negative side. Okay? And we'll move on to the second one. Here is x is greater than -1 but less than 1. So here it's approaching two values. X less than 1. X is going to approach +1 from the negative side, and x greater than 1. X is going to approach -1 from the positive side. Okay? And our third one, x greater than or equal to 1. So this just means x approaching 1 from the positive side, greater than or equal to 1. So I'm going to write those on the board. Okay guys, so here I wrote what values x is approaching and from which side. Okay, now we're going to have to find the one-sided limits 4 times because it's asking for a limit when x approaches -1 and when x approaches 1. So we're going to find when x approaches 1 from the negative side and the positive side, and when x approaches -1 from the negative and positive side. So I'm going to write it out. Okay guys, so let's try doing when x is approaching -1 first. Okay, So when x is approaching -1 from the negative side, which equation applies? This one, right? Because x is approaching -1 from the negative side. X has to be less than or equal to -1. So we're going to use -x minus 2 to find the limit for the left side. -x minus 2. Okay, sorry, excuse my writing. I'm writing with my left hand, okay? -x minus 2 for this equation is the left-sided limit equation, okay? And when x approaches -1 from the positive side, this equation, right? Just x, because it's approaching -1 from the positive side here. So just x. And we'll be able to determine this after finding those two values. So 1 second. Okay, guys. So here I substituted -1 because we're seeing if x is approaching -1. Plug in the -1 into each equation, and I found that the limit from the left side is -1, and the limit from the right side is -1. Now, because the limit of both sides is the same, that means the limit of x approaching -1 is going to be -1. Okay? Our total limit our limit of x approaching -1 is going to equal to -1. And this means that because these two limits are the same, it means that the function is continuous. Okay? Now let's move on to x approaches 1. It's the same thing. So let me erase the board. Okay, guys, here it's the same thing. X approaching 1 from the negative side, the left-sided limit, right here. X has to be less than 1. So x is approaching 1 from the negative side. And that means our equation is going to be just x. Okay, and x approaching 1 from the positive side. X has to be greater than or equal to 1, meaning that it is approaching 1 from the positive side. So this is going to be our equation. Okay, and now we substitute +1 into each equation and get our answer. Okay, guys, I plugged in 1 into each equation to find the answer, and I got that the left-sided limit equals to 1, and the right-sided limit, after plugging in 1, I get 1 minus 2, which is -1. So our left and right-sided limits are not the same value. They're not equal. So that makes x approaching 1, the limit does not exist for x approaching 1, making it also discontinuous. So after solving the question, we can answer this question now. Determine if limit x approaching -1 and x approaching 1 exists or not. This limit exists because both sides are equal, but this limit does not exist because both sides are not the same. Okay? So that's how you would solve a question like this. Okay, guys, so that's it for today's video. I did 2 examples and they were quite simple. So if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. And if you need harder examples, then let me know and I can teach them in the next video. So yeah, that's all for today. See you guys next time. Bye.